Is my child ready for the responsibility? Can the child charge the phone? Can the child keep it reasonably safe? Can the child follow family rules? Can the child understand that not every app should be installed? Can the child understand that App Store purchases are real money? Can the child accept limits? Can the child come to us when something strange happens online? It means after something has already happened. After the first accidental purchase, after the first inappropriate website, after the first message from someone strange, after the first fight about screen time, after the first moment when you realize your child knows more about bypassing limits than you know about setting them. So my rule is simple. First, the conversation. Second, the budget. Third, the setup. And fourth, the device. Because the phone, the safest iPhone, is not the newest one. It is the one that is set up well. Home budget, kids, and the first iPhone. Who should pay? Hi, and welcome back to CyberPapa. Today I want to talk about something that sounds very practical but is actually deeply emotional. Money. Children, and the moment when your child says, "Dad, can I have a new iPhone?" Or even worse, "Dad, I need a new iPhone." Because of course, in the language of children, I want and I need are very close relatives. Sometimes they are basically twins. And as a parents, we have to answer a very uncomfortable question. Should we buy the phone? Should the child pay for it? Should we split the cost? Should we buy a used one? Should we treat it as a reward? Or should we say, "You already have a phone. It works, it makes calls, it has a screen. Congratulations, you live in the future." Today I want to share how we handle this in our family. And I want to say this clearly at the beginning. I'm not saying this is the only correct way. Every family has a different budget, different priorities, different children, and different levels of patience. But I think the system we created at home can help many parents because it teaches children something very important. A phone is not magic. A phone is not a right. A phone is not just a toy. A phone is a tool, a responsibility, and let's be honest, a very expensive piece of glass that children somehow manage to drop exactly on the corner every single time. In our home, we come to one important rule. If a child wants to buy a useful or educational device, the family can support that purchase, but not by paying for everything. We usually use the simple rule: the child pays half, the family pays half. So if the child wants an iPhone, an iPad, or another useful device, we can help, but the child must also take part in the cost. And this changes everything, because when a child pays at least part of the price, the device stops being just something parents bought. It becomes something they worked for, something they waited for, something they had to think about. And suddenly the conversation changes, and instead of "buy me a phone," we can ask, "How much have you saved? What models are you thinking about? Why this one? What will you use it for? How much does it cost? What will happen if it breaks?" And that last question is very important, because children love talking about buying devices. They are less excited when we start talking about the repairs. But repairs are part of real life. In our family, we also use a similar rule for repairs. Usually, the child covers half of the repair cost. The family covers other half. Of course, there are exceptions. If the device breaks because of normal use, we help. If the child was careful, we help. If the accident was truly an accident, we help. But if the phone was thrown into a backpack with stones, water, sandwiches, a metal toy car, and something that used to be a banana 3 weeks ago, then the conversation becomes a little different. Because responsibility has consequences, and is not about punishment. This is about learning. A child who practices in the cost of a device starts to understand something very important. Technology has value, money has value, care has value, and this is one of the reasons why I included stories like this in my Cyber Papa book course. The book course is not only about clicking the right buttons on this iPhone. Yes, I show how to set up screen time. Yes, I show how to block inappropriate websites. Yes, I show how to manage apps, purchases, communication, location, and safety. But the bigger goal is different. The bigger goal is to help parents build smart digital habits at home, because parental controls are not only technical settings. They are family rules, they are conversations, they are boundaries, they are decisions. And sometimes they are budget decisions. Now let's talk about the first phone. Many parents ask, what is the right age for a first phone? And honestly, I do not think there is one universal rule and answer. For one child, an iPhone at 10 may be too early. For another child, an iPhone at 12 may be reasonable because of school, travel safety, or family logistics. But I think there is a better question than what age is right. The better question is my child ready for the responsibility? Can the child charge the phone? Can the child keep it reasonably safe? Can the child follow family rules? Can the child understand that not every app should be installed? Can the child understand that App Store purchases are real money? Can the child accept limits? Can the child come to us when something strange happens online? Because the phone itself is not a real issue. The real issue is the world inside the phone. And that world contains games, messages, strangers, ads, subscriptions, scams, social pressure, and things no child should see too early. That is why in our family, buying the device is only the part of the process. Before the child gets the phone, we talk. We talk about the cost, we talk about the responsibility, we talked about what happens if it breaks. We talk about apps, we talk about the limits. We talked about communication, we talk about privacy. We talk about location sharing. And then before the phone becomes fully the child's phone, we configure it properly. This is very important. Do not give a child an iPhone first and then think, I will set the parental controls later. Later usually means never, or it means after something has already happened. After the first accidental purchase, after the first inappropriate website, after the first message from someone strange, after the first fight about screen time, after the first moment when you realize your child knows more about bypassing limits than you know about setting them. So my rule is simple. First, the conversation. Second, the budget. Third, the setup. And fourth, the device. Not the other way around. Now let's go back to the money. Why do I like the 50-50 rule? Because it gives a real sense of participation. If we pay for everything, the child may be grateful for about 12 seconds. Then the device becomes normal, expected, obvious. But if the child has to save money, wait, compare models, and decide whether they really want to spend their savings, suddenly the device becomes a serious decision. And that is a beautiful educational moment. You can sit down with your child and compare options. A brand new iPhone, a used iPhone, an older model, a phone with more storage, a cheaper model with a new battery, a device that supports the newest iOS. And here's something very important for parents. Sometimes the best iPhone for a child it's not the newest iPhone. Actually, very often it is not. A child does not need the newest professional camera system to send you a message saying, can I stay longer at my friend's house? A child does not need the latest titanium frame to open Duolingo. A child does not need the most expensive model to call you from school. What the child needs is a reliable device supported by current software with a good battery. properly configured security, and parental controls. That is enough. And if your child says, but everyone has a better one, you can calmly answer, wonderful, then everyone can pay for yours. This is not cruelty, this is parenting. With a little comedy, maybe. Now let's talk about another important role in our family. Not every device receives family support. For us, useful or educational devices can be supported. A phone, maybe. An iPad for school, drawing, learning, music or creativity, maybe. A computer for learning, maybe. But a console? That is more complicated, because it is hard to call a game console an educational device. Of course, children will try. They will say, but Dad, this game teaches strategy, or this game teaches English, or this game improves reflexes. And maybe they are not completely wrong, but still, in our family, consoles do not automatically qualify for the same support. This is not because games are evil. Games can be great, games can be creative, games can be social, games can even teach useful skills, but a console is mainly entertainment. And entertainment is not the same category as a phone used for school, communication, safety and learning. This distinction is very helpful because children quickly learn that not every screen is the same. An iPhone used for contact and learning is one thing. An iPad used for drawing and piano practice is another thing. A console used for 5-hour Minecraft diplomacy with friends is another thing entirely. And yes, I know Minecraft can be educational. Children remind me of this often, with impressive legal arguments. Sometimes I feel like I'm not raising children. I'm raising 3 small lawyers specializing in screen time law. Now, what about expensive devices? This is another matter. And this is another important point. Even if a child saves enough money to buy a very expensive iPhone, we as parents can still say no, because affordability is not the only question. There is also risk. Can the child safely carry such an expensive device? What happens if it gets stolen? What happens if it breaks? Can the child afford half of the repair? Is the device too valuable for the child's daily environment? A child may have enough money to buy something, but that does not automatically means it is a good idea. This is a very useful lesson. Adults also need this lesson, by the way. Just because we can buy something does not mean we should. And I say this as a person who likes Apple devices a little bit too much. Some people call it being a gadget lover. I call it research. My wife may have a different word for it. Now, in the Cyber Papa book course, I explain many practical settings connected with family purchases. For example, how to set up family sharing, how to create a proper child account, how to use Ask to Buy, how to prevent in-app purchases, how to share purchases without giving the child your Apple account, how to check subscriptions, how to request a refund if something was bought by mistake. These things matter because many parents make one dangerous mistake. They give the child access to the parent's account because they want to share apps or avoid paying twice. I understand the logic, but it can create chaos. Messages can sync, photos can sync, purchases can happen. Children may see things they should not see. And sometimes they can accidentally or creatively spend money. That is why the book course shows the safer way. Separate child account, family sharing, parental approvals, clear rules. This gives the child access to what they need without giving them the keys to entire digital kingdom. And to make these lessons easier to remember, I'm also preparing small story booklets connected with the CyberPapa project. These booklets are short stories based on real life situations, because sometimes a story teaches better than a technical manual. A parent may forget the exact name of the menu, but they will remember the story of a child who spent too much money in apps. They will remember the story of a shared Apple account creating family chaos. They will remember the story of a child finding clever ways to walk around screen time limits. And after laughing a little, they may think, wait, maybe I should check my child's phone too. That is exactly the point. The book course gives you the instructions, the story booklets give you the situations. Together, they help parents understand not only what to click, but why it matters. Now, let's make this practical. If your child wants an iPhone, here is the family budget conversation I would suggest. First, ask, why do you need this phone? Not in aggressive way, not like a police interrogation, just honestly. Do they need it for school, for communication, for safety, for taking photos, for learning, for being in touch with friends, or mainly because the current iPhone is embarrassing? That last reason may sound silly to adults, but for children and teenagers, social pressure is real. We do not have to accept every demand, but we should understand the emotions behind it. Second task, how much does the phone cost? Let the child check prices. New, used, different models, different storage option, battery condition, repair cost, case and screen protector, because the real cost of an iPhone is not only the phone, it is the case, the glass protector, the charger, maybe the battery replacement, maybe Apple Care or insurance, maybe repairs. Children should see the whole picture. Third, ask how much can you contribute. This is where the 50-50 rule becomes useful. If the phone costs a certain amount, the child knows the target. They can save pocket money, they can collect birthday money, they can do extra tasks if your family allows that. They can wait, and waiting is not a bad thing. Waiting builds value. Waiting teaches patience. Waiting makes the final purchase feel earned. Fourth, decide together what happens if it breaks. This should be agreed before the purchase, not after the phone is already lying on the kitchen table with a spider web on the screen. Agree on repairs. Agree on responsibility. Agree on the case. Agree on where the phone should not go. For example, bathrooms, swimming pools with wild trampoline battles and mysterious backpack zones filled with crumbs and liquids. Fifth, set the phone up before handing it over. Create or check the child's account. Set up family sharing, set up screen time, set up limits, set content restrictions, set ask to buy, set location sharing if that is part of your family rules, set communication safety, check app installation rules, and then explain the rules to the child. Not as a threat, as a contract. You can say, this phone is yours to use, but it is not outside the family rules. That sentence matters, because children often think ownership means total freedom, but in a family, ownership also means responsibility. Now, some parents may ask, will the child be angry? Yes, maybe, probably, for a while, but that is okay. Our job is not to make every digital decision pleasant. Our job is to make it safe, reasonable, and understandable. Children do not need unlimited freedom inside a device connected to entire internet. They need guided freedom. They need gradually growing responsibility. They need rules that change as they mature. And they need parents who are not afraid to say, I trust you, but I will still set limits. Because trust and limits are not enemies. They work together. Trust without limits can be chaos. Limits without trust can be control. But trust with limits can become responsibility. And that is the real goal. Not to block everything, not to spy on everything, not to turn the iPhone into a digital prison. The goal is to teach teach a child how to live with technology, how to use it, how to respect it, how to protect themselves, how to understand money, how to make choices, how to wait, how to take care of something valuable, and maybe, just maybe, how not to drop the phone on concrete 3 days after buying it. Although I make no promises here. Children are very talented in this area. So to summarize, today's episode, when your child asks for an iPhone, do not start with the model. Start with the conversation. Why do they need it? Why will they use it for? How much does it cost? How much can they contribute? What happens if it breaks? What rules will apply? And before the device becomes part of everyday life, configure it properly, because the safest iPhone is not the newest one. It is the one that is set up well, with the right account, right limits, the right purchase settings, the right communication rules, and the right family agreement. This is exactly what I explain step by step in Cyber Papa book course. And if you prefer learning through stories, the Cyber Papa story booklets will show you real family situations where one small setting or one missing setting can change everything. So when the book course and story booklets, I really encourage you to check them out. They are made for parents who do not want to become IT experts, but still want to protect their children in the digital world. Because you do not need to know everything about technology. You just need to know the right things. Thank you for watching Cyber Papa. If this episode helped you, follow Cyber Papa for more practical digital parenting tips. And now I have a question for you. Would you buy your child an iPhone outright? Would you split the cost? Or would you make them save for the whole thing? Write your answers in comments. I'm very curious how your family handles it. See you in the next episode.